Good afternoon, councillors, members of the staff, members of the public and those of us joining on Zoom. This is a meeting of the ICC's Community Wellbeing Committee. There are no apologies, so we'll get straight into our first item, which is the public forum. And I'll ask the representatives from South Alive to come and take a seat, introduce yourselves, and we look forward to hearing about what you've been doing. Beryl and Courtney, thank you for giving up your time and joining us this afternoon.
Kia ora koutou. Thanks so much for the opportunity of coming back to talk to you. I'm Beryl Wilcox, I'm Chair of the South Alive Trust, and
I'm Courtney Ellison, I'm the Community Development Manager.
So we're here with a sort of a twofold presentation. Firstly, for those that are relatively new to the council and may not know a lot about South Alive and what we do, we'd love to let you know, but also for those that are well familiar, just providing you with an update on the work we've been achieving, and in particular our future focused planning that we're doing. We've just recently celebrated 11 years as an organisation, connecting and enabling our South Invercargill community. The principles of how we operate is based on the community-led development approach, and I know the council is quite strong on that community development. And the principles are to grow from shared local visions, to build from our strengths, to work with diverse people and sectors, to grow collaborative local leadership, and to learn by doing. And I guess learn by doing is what we're doing all the time. So our South Alive pod in the pantry is basically our community hub, and we have our community rooms there which are used regularly by many diverse local groups and businesses. We provide extremely low rates to allow the community to meet regularly. We offer free computer use with the internet. One thing we found with the South Invercargill community is that IT access is limited, and so it's really valued for people to be able to go and receive support. And of course our outdoor areas with the gardens, the play, the sports gear, the equipment we have. Recently 2 table tennis tables have just been installed, which we're thrilled about. And in that community hub, once again, we're striving to bring people together, to reduce isolation, to share interests. In particular, the pantry cafe, it's changed a lot over time to having a real value as a meeting space, and of course the food helps as well. Much of the work that we do extends right across the wider 9812 community, and I can't stress enough the importance and appreciation of our volunteers, which contributes to our success. Their time actually equates to thousands of hours a year, and we try hard to record what that means in terms of a dollar value. There are different action groups at work, people that are happy to assist, whether that be through micro volunteering tasks, through to major projects. And I just want to acknowledge our volunteers. We value their work, their time and commitment, and really appreciate their skills and experience. One example is our volunteers that are working as hosts at our community hub, greeting people, answering questions, and they then have a sort of sense of ownership as caretakers of our space. Thank you.
As Beryl said, we're led by what the community is identifying as important to them, and that really drives what we do. So a lot of my role is engaging with the community, and we do that throughout the year. But one of the formal ways that we engage is through our annual survey that we do. Some of you may have heard in the past us talk about the change in levels of pride that we've seen, and that continues to grow. So when we started 11 years ago, 35% of people who we surveyed felt a sense of pride in South Invercargill. I think last time we came and spoke to you, that was sitting up around 85 or the late 80s, and again that's grown in the last survey to 91%. So it's just really positive and encouraging to see that continual improvement in that level of pride. When we ask people what makes them proud to live in South Invercargill, these are some of the themes that came up. It's the people. That's the overwhelming response we get, is that sense of neighbourliness, the way people care for one another. People also love the community events and activities, the fact that everything's there on their doorstep, those amenities that are close by to them in the South Invercargill area. This survey also really helps to drive the priorities for the years going forward, and so we always try and get some insight into what we could do to make South Invercargill even better. And so these are some of the things that were identified by the community: more community events, more activities for young people, beautifying our spaces, and improving that shopping area, tidying that up a bit. So I'm just going to touch on a few of those things now, and some of those future priorities for us as an organisation. So the community events, as I said, that came through strongly in that survey. More than a quarter of our responses referred to community events as being something they want to see more of. And the community events that we run range from something really small, like a craft swap or a crop swap, up to obviously our large signature events like the Street Party and World Kindness Day, which grows each year. They also cater to a range of interests and demographics, so we've got quite a few events aimed at young people, like our school holiday activities, and our parkour, which you can see in the middle there, which is growing in popularity. And then we have things for our elderly community. We have people with a gardening or food interest with our composting workshops or gardening workshops. We've got people with creative interests with our craft swaps and that kind of thing. So there's something there for everyone, providing a range of different events and activities for people to engage in. And we're conscious of trying to spread out across the South Invercargill area too. So we do run a lot of events where we are in our community park, but we're looking to spread that out over the South Invercargill area. So yeah, we've often had the Trolley Derby on Children's Day at Elizabeth Park and Remu Street. We've got our drive-in movies, which we're hoping to have coming up in the next couple of months, which will be out further east in South Invercargill too. So just spreading across the South Invercargill area. One of the other priorities that has come through in our engagement is having more opportunities for our young people. And we had the chance with Vodafone Foundation concentrating some investment in Invercargill to get some funding to have a new rangatahi projects coordinator. So we've got Stacey Mataroa, who's just come on board with us at the start of this year, and she's driving a few trials for things we can be doing, providing opportunities for our rangatahi in the area. So some of the priority areas for that are around improving access and reducing transport barriers, connecting to employment opportunities, some tech skill development. So we're looking at some podcasting and also some computer building qualifications, and showcasing the talents. We've got some incredible talent in our community, and just providing a platform. We've got a great stage down there that we don't use as much as we could, so just utilising what we've got in our community and the talents of our people to bring that all together. And one of the other focuses is around food security and resilience. I think we all understand the increasing cost of living and pressures that everyone is facing. And through COVID-19, we sort of developed our Pay It Forward program, which delivers food parcels to people that need them. And so we've already been doing a bit of work in that food security space, and obviously for a long time since we've started, we've had our community gardens and our fruit and nut orchards across the South Invercargill parks and reserves. So we've already been doing a bit of work in that space, but we're just looking to amplify that. So we're looking at continuing some workshops around food, some cooking classes, catering to different demographics. So we were down at SITO week recently, connecting with the students, so looking to develop some cooking classes for students, young mums, seniors, catering to different parts of our community. Supporting veggie gardening through workshops and resources. We've connected in with Parakuri, a local person. Amelia is working in that space around reducing waste from a Te Ao Māori perspective, and continuing our work through our Pay It Forward program, and continuing that to support the mahi of our volunteer teams in the fruit and nut and community garden space. So those are just some of the key focus areas moving forward, continuing all of the existing stuff we do, but that's just highlighting a few of those future focus areas.
Moving on, March we noted was Neighbours Aotearoa Month nationally. So South Alive's theme was to reflect that, was about sharing, and we just put up sharing, you know, the skills, the knowledge, the energy, and there's a poster of the events scheduled for March. and that's only some of the extra things that we're doing over and above normal. Picnic in the park picnic at the pod has a particular event coming up this coming Sunday with our rangatahi youth. Lots of entertainment and access to services. Our closing whakatauki reinforces for us that it's not the individual, but it's the collective successes which strengthen South Alive's work from the many who contribute to our vision, which is a vibrant community that takes a lead in its own future. You're always welcome down. You can find out more about us on any of the media sites, and happy to answer any questions.
And I do have a few hard copies of those survey results if anyone is interested in taking one away with them.
Thanks, Courtney. Thanks, Beryl. Tom.
Yeah, question for me. I mean, I think South Alive's been an extraordinary success story. It really has. So congratulations for that. I mean, I think it's an accident of geography. You know, the South City shopping is in the southwest. It's only marginally south, and it's in the southwest. So my question is about the extent to which you've been able to engage with the southeastern part of the city, which is, you know, as far away from, you know, you and south as it is actually from us in the heart of the city. Have you managed to engage with them? Are you doing much to make sure that they are engaged, although much further away?
Through, I'll let Courtney add mostly that, but we have, as I said, when you talk about the hub, you forget about all the other things. So our neighbourhood support groups, our zero rubbish adopt streets, all of some of the gardens that are happening are right across the area, and including down south as far as Clifton, working with groups there. We have recently done a facilities review because some of the feedback we were getting was that transport and access issue, and Courtney, having done it, would like to probably add a little bit more.
Yeah, so we've just been seeing what facilities are available for the community to use across the whole South Invercargill area, looking at churches, sports, and starting to meet with the schools. I met with one today, and just seeing what spaces are available, connecting in with those different groups, making them aware of what we're doing and building those relationships with them. So we do reach across. We have a really good relationship with the schools in our area too, and they're sort of spread out east and south, so we have a good connection and connect with people through the schools as well, and our fruit and nut orchards are spread across the South Invercargill area. One thing that the fruit and nut team have just initiated in the last month is an orchard of the month, so they're doing a mailbox drop in all the houses that surround the parks where they've got an orchard, and invite them to an evening where they can learn more about the orchard and see what's there. So that's another way of just developing our reach across the whole South Invercargill area and connecting and building those relationships.
Just a specific example, just to add to that, is when we did the facilities review and went to different club groups and that, they said we'd love the locals to be able to use the facilities in the area, but at the time they were often, and I'm sorry this sounds very can't think of the word, but a lot of them were older men, and they running those organisations, and they were saying, but we don't know about Facebook or how to connect with social media or things like that. So then that alerted us to how can we support you to, you know, learn how to, you know, operate Facebook and have your places available for the locals to better use. So sometimes, you know, and I guess that's what it means with community-led development, is that the community drive things that become important.
Mayor Clark.
A couple of things, Beryl. Just reinforcing what Tom said about the success of South Alive, but a couple of issues. You got the new pump track down in Elizabeth. Do you know any sort of levels of engagement there? Do the very young use that park? Do you know? Why I ask is when you go into somewhere like Alexandra, it's got a pump track, a BMX track, a skate park, and a kids learner one where they run around and learn the road rules. Are all in the same area, but they're separate. The younger kids don't mix very well with the older kids. And I just wondered, like if you look at what's sitting in Otatara moment, which is that young pump track we've got, which is highly successful, would something like that fit in and around Russell Square, or would it compete against what's in Elizabeth Park as well?
Are you saying if we developed a pump track at Russell, should we develop a Russell
well,
a pump track at
the,
Russell
the
Square? Is that
we,
what you're...
the we is the council we, not the community we. You know, I mean, I've seen the success at Otara and the number of kids that are on that park, but they are predominantly younger kids that would not be on a road and wouldn't be on a BMX track, a BMX park either. The level's too high for them, and some kids won't go where there are older kids either. So it's been really good for us. But I just thought, why don't we have one in South City as well? Can't promise that, but you know, it begs the
answer.
question.
Toilets first, please.
Yeah. But
The community's crying out for toilets.
I just wondered, I didn't want to compete with what you've already
Yeah.
got developed in the BMX track, which is down in Elizabeth Park.
I can't answer about the use.
No.
I'm sorry, but we can certainly find out a little bit more
Yeah,
about
that would be
it.
helpful.
There would be an opportunity to trial one if you talk through our active transport coordinator here at council. I know that they have access to a portable one that goes to different locations around Southland.
Yeah, we have been connecting in with Active Southland and their transport person who's spoken about, I think, a pop-up one going to Elizabeth Park. So we're looking to coordinate them with them around running an event.
Sure.
Yeah.
And the
be a
second,
good trial and
second
engagement.
question was around esports, which is a nice fancy way of talking about kids on computers, unfortunately. But that's huge as well. And I just wonder whether there's any capacity in South City for not a video arcade, but somewhere where these kids can go and play and compete against each other, online compete, which means they're connecting with people outside.
Yeah, so for about 5 years we've been working with James at Your Corps and running free youth gaming events, and they have been hugely popular. We've had noise control called because the kids were having so much fun and laughing and playing. So, it's a good problem. So we've been, I know he does bigger stuff in town, but we've been working with James for a while around running those events, and they are a great way of reducing the isolation that can come with gaming and building on the positives of it, and getting the kids all in a room together.
So I guess what I was thinking was not just the one-off events that James does, because I mean I've had some interaction with him as well, but more of a regular pop-up space where people could go, I don't know, Friday nights, Saturdays and Sundays, but not compete with school, where they have a venue that might be open 8, 9, 10 hours a day. Because some of these kids will play that long, and they'll play internationally that long.
I think you'll find there's a place in Train that's looking at that.
Yeah. Oh, well, that's great if there is. Yep.
Grant.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Firstly, congratulations. I think the work you do is outstanding in our community, and so it's really great. And it's good to see, the numbers you're bringing back. So well done. Interested in, two things really. Obstacles. Is there any one or two big obstacles that need to be removed? And if they were removed, it would enable your further success. And secondly, how does council, facilitate your success more?
Number one, money.
Yeah, I thought you'd say
we've
that.
been really fortunate that we've had a 5-year partnership with the Department of Internal Affairs. They've got a community-led development program that we've been part of, and our 5-year partnership ends in September this year.
Right.
They've got a 6th. Due to the feedback from the groups, they've added a 6th transition year where we get a smaller amount of funding, but that helps us transition to other fundings. But that will mean that, our long-term security
So what is the
becomes
quantum?
harder.
How much is that?
Currently we get from them just over $200,000 a year.
Right.
To follow through on that too, we've had a sustainability plan in place, because you can't just not react to those sort of things, and we don't want to spend all our time just constantly fundraising. I don't think that's the main purpose.
No.
And so we've had a sustainability in place, and some of the things we are doing are with a view to being able to be viable. For example, the meeting rooms, and perhaps extending those. Looking at some of those opportunities that we have. But that alone, you often find for fundraising that one of the barriers, coming back to your point, is that often people are really keen about projects and less keen about operations and maintenance. And so that's really important. The community have told us consistently that they want some key staff. We actually have the equivalent of 2 full-time staff to actually enable them and coordinate things to do. So that's one of the challenges for that.
Okay, just a secondary. In terms of, so with the 200,000, so that would sustain the programs you're doing now, or does that facilitate additional growth in what you're doing and allow you to sort of reach out further to youth or in other aspects, or develop, say, around your your youth unemployment.
The 200,000 is what we're currently getting from each year from that DIA funding, but we still are supplementing that with other funding, like from Vodafone Foundation
Yes.
or MSD for food security initiatives. So some of those other discrete projects get their own separate funding as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, we might manage 5 different funders at once.
Yeah, and
So
if,
yeah, it'd be more.
and if you were to fund, what's the time frame? So you just wouldn't want it every 12 months. Is it 3 years? Is it 5 years?
Yeah. Well, we know,
what's the optimum
yeah.
time to be able to say, well, we can dig into this and invest really
3 to 5 years.
3 to 5
Yeah.
years? Yeah,
That's been one of the benefits of having this 5-year partnership is that certainty.
yeah.
Yeah.
So 5 years probably. Thank you.
Trish.
I know the wonderful work you do and I really, really love it. Courtney, is there any chance of extending or getting another lot from DIA, another 5 years?
No, I think that not through that CRD program, because they're always bringing on new groups around the country. There's about 18 partnerships that they currently have, and they keep that number around 18 to 20. So as groups finish their 5 years,
Somebody else
new
comes up.
groups come on. So there's opportunities for other funding from the DIA, like lotteries and COGS, but not in that CRD program at this stage. Yeah.
I do agree that there could be value because there's quite a number of those partnerships that just stop. And I don't think that's the purpose for South Alive. Our purpose is to continue and be viable.
And you can see that if you have, if you have got that continuity of funding, then you can get on with doing your work and not have to worry about the operational stuff.
And although I've alluded to it, the volunteer hours, if you put a dollar value to that, and yet the volunteer hours alone show the support that South Invercargill community are putting in behind us. You know, it's all driven by them. It's the only time I've been in a governance role that's completely 180 reversed, and we're there to enable the community to succeed.
Evelyn.
Oh, kia ora. As you know, I'm a neighbour, I'm a user. One of the things that concerned me when I was there not long ago is it would appear that supply chain issues are affecting the viability of the pantry. I don't know if that's an unfair comment, but it just seemed like we're still in this post-COVID uncertainty things. You used to have eggs are challenging at the moment. How does that affect your viability? Because the return from the pantry is supposed to help with the whole level of activity. Is that an issue for you at the moment, or not as much of an issue as I might think as an outsider?
To be fair, I'd say it was an issue. It's a social enterprise that was established with the purpose of providing the funds as part of that sustainability plan. With a variety of reasons, it hasn't been, as successful as we've hoped. And we're in the middle of reviewing, refreshing, and making some changes there. As I also indicated in the PowerPoint, it's inadvertently become the community hub, the place to gather, and that wasn't actually, strangely enough, the original purpose. So I think we have to reflect that and make changes in different ways.
Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for your mahi. I had the pleasure of sitting with several of the South Alive volunteers at the midwinter fundraising dinner, and the value that they get from being able to be a part of what it is that South Alive delivers is substantial. Their pride was genuine and heartwarming. So thank you for your presentation and for taking the time to come along and be with us this afternoon.
Thank you.
Councillors, our next item is the minutes of the Community Wellbeing Committee back on February 14th. If somebody wants to move that they are confirmed, Councillor Crackett, Councillor Dermody, can put that all in favour.
Aye.
Against? Carried. The extraordinary meeting on... that's the Extraordinary Community Wellbeing Fund. That's where it's so useful having these two similarly named committees, which I promise we will change soon.
I'll move that.
Thank you. Put that all in favour.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Tab 6 is the minutes of the District Licensing Committee. Now here's an interesting thing in that we've never received these before. Now what they are is a record of the work that I do each week in signing off manager certificates, renewals, licensed premises renewals, new licenses, special events and the like. I'm ringing in my ears is the comment that Tom made this morning during the workshop about unnecessary paperwork. So this is something new that you haven't had before. Is it interesting for you to see the statistics? I have actually held back the names of the managers, but their application numbers are in there just for privacy reasons. But is it useful?
Yeah. Yes, I think so.
Cool. Okay. One of the interested, there are a few changes that the DLC might bring in this year, which is part of what's being looked at nationwide. And for your interest, we also have a hearing next Wednesday. Would somebody like to move that the report is received? Evelyn, Ria, put that all in favour.
Aye.
Against, carried. The Active Communities Fund. It's really just an update. This was something that we administered within council. We have transferred administration to Active Southland. I'm the new council representative on that, and they are getting together later this month or early next month to set out their new terms and conditions. So it's really just informative. Somebody like to move the reports received? Trish, Leslie, questions? Tom.
Chair, the only question I have, it's not actually covered in the report, is by what process does council approve the bulk funding of this? I think it was obviously before I was on council, but there was a decision to move the funding to a body that knew something about what would actually approve it, so a good idea. But presumably council approve the amount each year, do they get?
There is an allocation that comes each year from Sport New Zealand, I think. It used to be the Hillary Commission, but it was by council resolution that it shifted. Leslie?
Oh, so it's not actually rate funded, it's...
No.
Okay, that was my question.
It's like Creative Communities, and that the money comes from an external.
It was the old Hillary Commission funding when the Hillary Commission ceased to exist. So councils throughout New Zealand were given money from the old Hillary Commission. Most councils, when we explored it, had actually used their funding. We operated slightly differently in that we saw it as a long-term funding for active communities, but we also saw it at the time we made the decision as time for a body with more depth in the active community space was able to administer the fund. We checked with what is now Sports New Zealand, who replaced the Hillary Commission, to ensure, in the spirit of the original funding, that was an appropriate decision on our behalf. They supported us doing that. We felt the time had come for that much wider view of active community funding and use, and our Active Southland was the obvious body to take that, but no, it wasn't rates funding. We administered
So do we still act as a post box for the money? Do we get the money, then pass it to... No, so it goes directly?
Straight to Active Southland now. Alex, quick declaration?
Quick declaration. I obviously sit on as a trustee on the RST, Active Southland. So, like Councillor Sophos quite rightly said, we ended up having a wealth of reserve there that ended up compounding, and we weren't actually getting it out to the community as quickly as it was compounding year on year. And they also, Active Southland also administer several other funds on behalf of like Sport New Zealand, like the Te Manawa Fund and that. So what we were finding is that people would come to us, and Active Southland had a lot more knowledge on where to go and what could be funded through which funds. So like Councillor Soper said, we made the decision to pass it over so that they could be, I guess, the single source of truth, rather than trying to push people around from here to there and everywhere.
It was one of those decisions that just made really good sense.
Yeah.
Pania.
I noticed that the applications primary benefit the Invercargill city area. Is it?
It was the original
So
fund.
it's purely for the city.
It was ring fenced.
Do we have a mover and seconder for receiving the report? Nigel and Evelyn. Questions? Thanks for the question, Tom. Put that then. All in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. Which brings us to the activities report. joining me at the top of the table for her last meeting with council before deserting us to go to Timaru.
Yeah.
Trudy, you can take us through this.
Kia ora koutou, thank you, Mr. Chair. So I will draw your attention to a couple of things that have come up in the past month. One is an increase in parking disputes, a massive increase that we've seen, and as a result of that, staff believe the systemic issue is a lack of engagement with the public, and so they're putting together a campaign to be able to help regular users of our city street parking with how to use the different technology and making sure the equipment is working all of the time. You'll also notice that any questions you've got about the media, we've got Lisa here to comment on that today. And notice that our leisure and recreation teams have put together a really thorough overview of what's been going on in their spaces, so we welcome any questions.
So again, following on from the question that Tom raised this morning, do you find the information in the activities report sufficient? Do you want more? Do you have actually any questions about what's contained in this report? Evelyn, then Rangi.
I'm not sure why I've not noticed this before, or perhaps it hasn't been so noticeable before, but there's actually a month time lag in this. So we're in March, we haven't got a report that covers February. I don't mean to be particularly picky about it. I just wonder if the lag means that we're not quite as surprised as we could be.
So I can explain that. Reports come through a process operationally, and they need to be with the executive leadership team 2 weeks before. So the data, we never quite meet the cutoff. So it's been agreed previously that yes, there will always be a bit of a lag. We'll try to make it as current as possible.
Thank you for that clarification.
Rangi.
Thanks, Chair. Look, just regarding animal control and with dogs and various lists it has here, and under infringements, what would barking dogs be classified? You know, like as in a complaint to council about ongoing barking dogs. Is that work in progress, or just the reason I'm asking this? I know 2 houses very close to me have lodged complaints, and they're just taking a while. And I just wondered, you know, whether this gets registered on the list or, yeah.
Through you, Mr. Chair. So it would be lodged as an RFS, a request for service, and they remain open until they're resolved. With barking dogs, there is a detailed process that our staff go through, which relates to our enforcement strategy and policy. The first piece is education. There's also monitoring that takes place, both by monitoring by the people who have complained about the dogs and by our staff completing work. And then finally, for example, we had one last year where we actually, the result was the dog needed to be rehomed as it wasn't able to be contained from barking. They do take some time. You can imagine it can be an emotional issue for the complainant and the people who own the dog, and staff work very closely together to resolve those as fast but also as practical as possible.
Oh yeah, it's a delicate subject. So is it like a 6-month work in progress?
We don't have a time frame around it as such, but and I can't speak to individual issues, but happy to discuss further offline or to get the actual staff engaged with that.
So yeah, so getting back to my original thing, it's not really listed here as a...
It's not broken down to that detail. So you've got...
It's a request for service.
It's a request for service.
Dogs, wandering dogs.
Yes.
RFSs, right, okay.
Yeah. So there could be multiple things like sheep out on a road or goat escaped.
Right.
We have multiple types.
I won't do any goats.
So in terms of the information, that's where it's really valuable for staff to understand what level of detail you want and how you want to receive it, and whether you want it monthly or whether you'd like it quarterly or something like that.
Is that a follow-on, Tom?
Yeah,
So I've got a line of people.
oh, sorry, I beg your pardon.
No, I'll add you to it. So I've got Leslie,
Yep.
Rhea, Grant, then Tom. So Leslie.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. You asked about the usefulness of the information, and I just wanted to say, if anything, I'm quite happy with the activities report to see more, not less. simply because we can't be at every activity or event or public program, and it is really worthwhile to see the report of what is happening. Not that we want to be involved in the operational matters, but simply to help keep councillors abreast of exactly what is happening in the community, what we are delivering. Seeing some of the photos is great. I think actually the activities reports have improved with some photos being added to them over the time I've been on council, and just hearing what the teams are doing and delivering, I think, is helping to build that wider picture for all of us as councillors of what is being delivered. So from the point of view of asking for the usefulness, I actually think the activity reports are very useful, and from my perspective could even be a little bit more descriptive than they are of particular events.
Thanks for the feedback, Leslie. Rhea?
I concur with Councillor Soper. I just wanted to, under the compliance table, the last entry, abandoned vehicles. In January 2022, we had 19 identified as abandoned, and in 2023 it says not used. Could you, what does that?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I can help you understand that. So the compliance team did some analysis on what we were classing as an abandoned vehicle, whereas what was actually classed as a parking complaint. And so, for example, you could be living at street 1A, or outside your street, you go out, there's a vehicle that's always parked there, it's never moved, you ring up and it's actually a parking complaint because we don't know it's an abandoned vehicle. It might just be that it's moved when you're not aware. So we're reclassifying them to be more aligned with the legislation, and so it becomes a parking complaint as opposed to abandoned vehicle before it gets to that stage. That gives us more opportunity to infringe or to take compliance measures with that approach.
Thank you.
Thank you. Grant?
Yeah, just similar to Leslie's comment around the reporting, I think it's very useful, but referencing this morning's conversation, would it be useful in the purpose to define the instances we're reporting back against our legislative requirements around service or something like that? So it's framed in the report that we're, it's an update on activities particularly related to our obligation to deliver this service to our community. So it gives context to the report, and that'll help drive what's in the report to ensure we've got the oversight that we're meeting the requirements of our obligations. Does that make sense?
Grant, can I clarify, do you mean against what we're reporting on in the LTP or our legislative requirements?
Well, probably both. Yeah. Our obligations, be it under the legislative or our commitment through LTP, which is, it's put together with the community. I just think it'd help sort of tighten it up and give us confidence that we're delivering those services or effectiveness around that.
Thank you. Tom, then Evelyn.
So I was just going to, Councillor Soper and Councillor Bond have already spoken in support to keep me all getting all the information, so I hesitate. But you often find that these sorts of reports come organically. A councillor in 1859, asked for a particular piece of information, so it started to appear in the report, and it just keeps appearing. Yeah. Forever, and so each time a councillor asks for a new piece of information, it just adds to the burden of collecting it. And of course, all the information in here is interesting, but what I would like to hear from council staff is whether there are particular pieces of information that just take disproportionate amount of time to prepare, and whether and that being the case, whether we actually need to see that. And it's not only this report. I think it's more broadly all reports, and I think it's something that, now Michael's not here, but I think it's something that the chief executive should be looking at with these staff. Is is there a lot of stuff which, of course, it's interesting, everything's interesting, but as a stuff that's disproportionately time consuming, where and ask us the question, do you really need to see this, council, because it takes us 2 hours a week to prepare it, and it's so that was really the thrust of what I said earlier, accepting the point that Councillor Soper's making, which is an interesting read, for sure.
It is a fair point, Tom. I guess I was asked the question as chair at the beginning of the term what I wanted to see in there, and I thought it was better actually for the committee to come to terms with what it was looking at first before asking you that question, and we're at that stage now. But Trudy, do you want to respond from a staff perspective and the time that it takes for compiling that report?
Certainly. So we are improving our reporting all of the time, and we've got a rhythm with what we have to report on it. So we need to keep our eye on the data. We need to be making sure that we're resolving things within different timeframes for legislative requirements. So from a terms of onus, the challenge is getting staff to start to analyse what they're seeing for you and put that into context. And I think it's a good habit for staff. It's not onerous if you develop the rhythm. And I know Jonathan will be able to speak to that. Potentially 18 months ago there wasn't a rhythm. There's a rhythm now. And I know that for our leisure and recreation services, there's a sense of pride being able to bring this to the table as well. But I know that Michael is always looking to make sure we have the most effective and efficient use of our staff. And that's something I know he will want to take up with the executive leadership team to make sure that that is happening in an appropriate manner.
Thank you.
It was for a while that we got down simply to reporting on the numbers that we were required to provide as reporting on the KPIs, and what we were missing were those nuggets, those great little stories that actually form part of the activities report, which was something that we didn't necessarily have any jurisdiction over as governors, but gave us a sense of pride to receive, and certainly gave the staff a sense of pride to be able to share with us. And I think they've formed an important part of what we received. Jonathan, was there anything that you wanted to add?
Kia ora. No, I think the parts have been covered. What I will say is that I myself have found myself sometimes grasping around the commentary. So what I chose to do this time around was not include a commentary, and I think there's something to be said for going back to the council officers and just maybe giving them that licence.
Thank you. Trish?
I'd just like to acknowledge the good work that's going on Facebook. Thank you. It seems to be some good stories coming out all the time, and it makes me feel good, so thank you.
Evelyn?
Just one thing that isn't reported against this time, and I'm not sure if I'm missing, but in terms of compliance, non-consented or non-conforming activities, how much of that is there, and how long does it take to resolve those sorts of things? Because I don't see it reported against this time, but I'm sure there are some.
Jonathan?
Through you, Chair. They're similar to animal control and barking complaints that they'd come through as RFS, and it is very open-ended in some cases to how long they can take to resolve. We work to resolve them as practically as we can, but by all means we can certainly include the non-compliance RFS. We may need to divide them into the various categories, building, etc., planning.
Thank you. I was asked by somebody to ask the questions, so.
Thank you. Rhea, then Mayor Clark.
Yeah. Thank you, Trudy. I also see under the property records team that the table there that shows last year's comparison to this year's. So I'm aware that there's been a lot of significant work put in by your team to have enable the public to access these records. What would, because you're leaving us, what would you say under the property records information that we've got has been a real huge significant matter in terms of dealing and delivering on those services? Is there still things that you're concerned about?
I think it's more things I think there's an opportunity for. So it's deciding as a council on a path forward for online access to files and where that sits and what that may look like, and what is possible. That if I reflect a year ago, we had a very new team, and for them to be delivering is a real credit to all of those staff, and they continue to deliver. They do a lot of work that goes unnoticed and unseen, but we've seen a decline in the property market. We can see it cooling off because of the drop in the number of property file requests. But I think it's more about opportunities. As the digitisation process continues, where does council want to be in terms of self-service, and what will be appropriate level of access if there's a public viewing process?
Thank you.
Mayor Clark.
Yeah, just a couple of things for me. I think there's too much in the report. We talked about that this morning, and Tom's alluded to that as well. It's nice to know, but we don't need to know. It's operational. I mean, when I think about the areas that I would like to know about, animal control is clearly one of them. It's been an itch for us in the past, and certainly the whole consenting services area is an area that if we don't get regular feedback on that, we can't answer criticism we get from the community. I don't particularly need to know whether the cafe at this Splash Palace is doing okay or not. And I am mindful of the number of vacancies we hold and the constant feedback we get from the group managers that they're under pressure to provide a lot of information to us. So I just wonder whether, from my end, animal controls and consenting could be a monthly report to this committee, but the others could be quarterly or even 6 monthly in some cases, just so we have an overview, but we just don't need that constant feedback. Now, I know that one of the beauties of constantly collecting for a report is that it keeps people focused, but we should find other mechanisms to do it than extra work, I think.
Thank you. Councillors, any other questions, comments or feedback?
I like the report.
Thanks, Pania. Look, and thanks for your engagement with that as well. Like I said, I wanted to leave it a couple of meetings before asking, and I also see it as one of those things that is living, and that if our requirements change through the term and what it is that we want to see, that we can make those adjustments as we go. So again, that continuous feedback would be useful. If there are no further questions, would somebody like to move that we receive the sorry?
So I was remiss not to mention that these sort of monthly reports could include topics by exception. So if something was blowing out in a particular area that the staff felt we should have a bit of a heads up on, that would be okay too.
I think that reporting by exception is always useful.
Yeah.
Councillor Soper, seconded Councillor Bond. I'll put that all in favour.
Aye.
Against, carry. And there being no further items in our public agenda before moving into public excluded for the reasons as outlined in the agenda, I will take this opportunity in open meeting to wish Trudy well. Thank you very much for your service over your time here after we stole you from Southern District. We wish you well returning to Timaru, home of the far inferior cheese roll, a title that they quite unjustly tried to steal from us a couple of years ago, but there was an incident where our former mayor did try and poison John Campbell, and proving that ours was better. I don't think he was the right representative. It's a lovely space. We look forward to hearing back from you, but thank you for the changes that you've made during your time here and for the professionalism from which you've carried out your job. I'll move that we go into public excluded for confirming one set of minutes and receiving the others for the reasons it's outlined. Seconded by Councillor Dermody. Put that all in favour.
Aye.
Against, carried. Thank you very much to those who've joined us on the live stream.